So this problem is interesting. It brings up an interesting point about the if true condition, which is on a lot of command of evidence questions. They are not available for the command of evidence quantitative questions. And I'll explain why that's important from this example. The command of evidence basically is the strengthens, weakens argument prompt. And when there's no table or graph available, the condition usually says, if true, if any of these answers are true, what blah, 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 right? Meets the condition, supports or weakens. And you can therefore take the answer choices as true conditions, as premises. However, on the data questions that use tables and graphs, it doesn't have that same prompt. It says you must support with data from the table. And in this case, it's interesting because C says essentially the right answer if you take it as a true condition. However, it's not a condition presented in the paragraph or the table. So if you treat it like a similar strengthens, weakens question and treat it as it's an if true condition, then you would choose C. You'd also choose A because that's a correct answer, but you would also choose C, which is very curious. So I started off thinking about this almost as if it were an if true condition from a similar strengthen weakens problem with the if true condition. But this is not that. So because it's not necessarily true or in the table at all that approximately 100% of the people who speak Swahili as their first language live in Kenya, which the paragraph says up above, that's 15 million people, I cannot take that as true. I have to instead, in this case, for table and data, graph-related questions, I'm always assessing, is it accurate and is it relevant to the data in the table or the graph? So when I look at the condition here, I can't think of it as true, a premise in an if true prompt. I have to assess it relative to the graph or the table in this case. And that means it's simply not accurate to the graph. Therefore, C is incorrect. So that was throwing me off for a little while, as you'll see in this question as we go through it. I was thinking of C as an if true condition, but really I have to look at it as a not accurate to the table answer, and therefore it's wrong. So be careful of that. You can easily, if you're not cognizant of that can make a difference on some problems. It's a subtle but yet important difference you could definitely run into, and you have to treat the two differently. Take a look at the following answer explanation and how that comes into play. Which choice uses data from the table to support? We want to support the underlined claim, okay? So let's read the paragraph. Swahili is estimated to be the first language of up to 15 million people worldwide, their first language, and that's across the world. Notice we only have 3 countries in our table. That's not worldwide, okay? It's also an officially recognized language in Tanzania, Kenya, and the DRC, which is what's shown here, which means these countries use Swahili in government documents and proceedings. Here's our underlined claim that we need to support. But we're going to get a contrasting idea, even in countries where almost everyone speaks Swahili. So what countries do everyone speak Swahili here? These 2, right? Not the DRC, because a minority, 25%, speak Swahili there. So for many, it isn't their first language, but it is instead their second, third, or fourth language. So Tanzania has approximately 61 million Swahili speakers, right? Okay, that seems to be true according to the table, which is much more than the estimated total number of people worldwide for whom Swahili is their first language. Okay, so that means a lot of their Swahili speakers, couldn't possibly be first language. Even if all the Swahili, the first languages, were in Tanzania, then it would still be the majority would be non-first language Swahili speakers. So in other words, it would be 61 minus 15, which would be 46, that did not speak Swahili first, even in Tanzania. And that looks like it could well be the right answer here. Let's keep going. That's kind of a tricky postulate there, a tricky answer. Tanzania is estimated to have at most 15 million Swahili speakers. No, it says Tanzania has approximately 61 million Swahili speakers. It could only be 15 million first language speakers. So, yeah, that's not right. That's not true, according to the table and the text. Approximately 100% of the people who speak Swahili as their first language live in Kenya, which has a total population of 55. So if they all lived in Kenya, that 15 lived in Kenya, that were their first language speakers, does that support, even in countries or almost, so that is one of our countries where speak Swahili. For many, it isn't their first language, but it's instead their second, third. So that would leave 40 million in Kenya who are not first language speakers. Okay, that seems kind of similar to A. Let's keep going. We'll come back to those. D, approximately 100% of Kenya's population speaks Swahili. So 100% of Kenya's population speaks Swahili. Okay, that's not true, according, that is true, sorry. Well, only 25% of the DRC of the Congo speaks Swahili. Okay, yeah, but that's information on the table. It says nothing about, in most cases, Swahili is not the first language, even in countries where everyone speaks Swahili. So the first condition, everyone speaks Swahili, are these two countries, Kenya and Tanzania, okay? And the claim is, for many, it isn't their first language, but instead their second, third, or even fourth language. Well, there can only be 15 million first language Swahili speakers worldwide. So whether it's Kenya, whether they're all in Kenya or all in Tanzania, it's still many people in each of those countries would only speak Swahili as a second or third language. So let's go back and check A and C. A, Tanzania, that's one of our possibilities, has approximately 61 million Swahili speakers, which is much more than the estimated total number of people worldwide for whom Swahili is their first language. So that, because that's more than the worldwide total, that means most, or many of them at least, because it doesn't say most, it says many, that they must not be first language speakers. Okay? C says approximately 100% of the people who speak Swahili as their first language live in Kenya. Well, no, we don't have to have all of them living in Kenya, which has a total of 55. Okay? Okay, I think I see the difference. So my problem with A and C is they both logically lead to the same conclusion. If 15 million people are first language speakers in either Tanzania or Kenya, then the majority of the other people in that country must be second language speakers, which is the underlying condition. I'm reading C as though it's the premise, but remember the question says you must use data from the table. Nothing in the table says, as in answer choice C, that the 100% or 15 million first language speakers live in Kenya. That is just not the case. So A relies, or C relies on that particular detail, which is not in the table. And again, the question requires us to use only data from the table, not a new premise that's not in the table. That's what C does. A doesn't do it. Therefore, A is the right answer. Very tricky. Be careful of that. So everything could be right. It could lead to the same conclusion, but you must use data from the table. The answer choice itself cannot put forth a new premise not in the table that you're relying on.